Hello and welcome to studio time. Had to remember what program we are in today. So today we're going to continue from this morning's. I'm going to work on, as you can see here in the background, Apple of Our Yard, and I'm going to be doing. This morning they had more light on the table and less of the movement across like the leaf and the stem. I stopped at almost the opposite problem. Um, I don't have enough light on my table. So we're going to see me push and pulling on that today. I just oiled it out before coming on air. You can see that reflection, but the reason it's at such a extreme angle there is so that when we're head on, we don't have that glare. Let's see. See, turned out pretty good. And the color in the background's pretty accurate. That red's a tad bit hot, but anyway, such is the case. Our palette for the day is going to be ivory black, the ultramarine blue, burnt umber, yellow ochre, cad red light, and then I've got my flake white replacement with the Neo Magelp. Our friend Cliff is back. Hey, bud. Thanks. Um, I wish you lived around the corner so you'd give me a few tips. Anyway, so let's head over to the wide camera and get going on this bad boy. I will have my back to you some of the time, so I won't be able to see the comments all the time, but we'll stop and check in. So I think the first thing I'm going to tend to is I'm going to strengthen that shadow just a little bit, and probably the shadow on some of those leaves as we ended this morning. I'm going to have to make a little more there. As I said, light up that tabletop. And let's see if we can't try to bring this thing home. Bring it home. All right, so what's a dark, let's go for a dark red. Right, so that's dark, but there's not a lot of red in there. And this cadmium happens to be very strong. So we want to try to keep that value, but add color. It's always a dance. It's always a dance. One of the hard things about doing this on film and demoing is I really do like to kind of sit with these colors for a little while, let them almost get into the nervous system, right? Let them register where they're at, rather than mix them up and use them. So we've got that. I don't think that's going to be quite. It's kind of brown. So let's ask a question then. What if we did black with some cad red? Where would that put us? I don't think it's going to put us where we want to be, but I'm surprised at how often I'm surprised. So I'm going to try it out anyway. Sometimes it's just kind of a temperature thing. So that looks warm. So we may have to use a combination of those. And then the same dark on that green leaf. Oh, what was that going to be? And again, the yellow and blue just seemed a little too high chroma. Chroma. So what will the yellow and black give us? Remember this green, we want to keep it on the warm side. Shadows are warm, lights are cool. And then we've been talking too about keeping, like right now, you see the rich color comes because there's no white in it. Once you start adding white, it grays down. So use that to the advantage. Use these colors for shadows and darks, and then anything in the light, add some white to it. Um, See, this feels better. It's almost a temperature thing. I don't know if that's too dark or not, but we're going to start right there on those shadows. And what else? What else? What else do we need to start with? I think that's it. I think those are good starting places. But why don't I start with bigger piles? So as I start to pull these things out, we're going somewhere. So that black's stiff, very stiff. So a certain amount of medium will correct that. Too much medium and you'll have new problems. And rather than working from these little bitty piles, what I want to do is start with these big piles that I can pull from and gray from and use for the rest of the painting. And that way we can keep some harmony as long as we keep our temperatures and our colors and our values straight. And again, rather than getting somewhere right now, at least for me, it's about calming down and getting into the rhythm of the paint. Creativity is really nothing more than taking your time. And what I mean by that, rather than the first thing that jumps to mind, you don't take that as a solution and you run off with it. But you go, okay, that's one solution. We'll call that solution A. Let's set that aside. How else can I solve this problem? You come up with another solution. Aha. But wait, you set that aside and you come up with another one. And if you came up with three solutions instead of one to every problem you have and every step along the way, you're going to be much more likely to come up with something more original and creative than if you just went with solution A when it first popped into your head. Okay, again, the canvas is the ultimate arbiter. In other words, and we're going to let the canvas tell us if this is too dark, too light, or whatever. Right? It looks one way on the palette, and that's great, but how does it look on the painting? And that feels like a better pile, something we can do. So we should probably do the same thing over here. Get enough material that we can have a good time. We can have a good time. Oh, looks like Tom and Linda made it. Welcome, 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 welcome. We'll give you the tour shortly. We're just going to be mixing up some paint here. We're going to do some more of this yellow ochre. Well, actually, I liked that black, didn't I? That was a rhetorical question because the answer is yes. I did like that black and what it did. Again, black's so stiff. And if we were in the light and needed impasto, that would be excellent. But we're not there. We're in the shadow and we need it to be thinner paint. So we want to flow a little better. Right? So get a feel for how much resistance the paint's giving you. And along with that, you also want to how much coverage is it giving you? Eventually, like when I'm painting, I don't consciously think about those things, but I'm constantly testing those things. Testing them out. I need more, I need less. Okay, we got some good shadow there. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some gray that we're gonna be able to pull from. And again, let's start with just a straight gray, which would simply be black and white. Might have to put some more black out. And remember, for your gray values, rather than trying to knock a color down, just start right there in the center, black and white gray, and then gently pull it into color. Okay, so for instance, we've got our gray here. Set this white aside. What's going to happen when we pull? And if this is shadow, what happens after shadow? We got a warm shadow. We want to go cooler to release. And that's what that gray did. Now you may want this value lighter. I don't think you're going to want it much darker, but you may want it lighter. And then what would happen right over here? The same thing. So out of this one pile, we can get different runs. And this is typically more how I think of color. I almost think of I think of concept and focal point more as a movement. I think of color as a movement, right? I don't know if musicians, but I would think after some point a musician doesn't think of just a note as a duh, 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 but they think of the complexities of the note. You know, how sudden is the start? How soft is the finish? How long is it held? Is it a constant tone? And so it's just a little bit different way of thinking about color. Now, this is kind of on the uber cool side, and by uber cool, I mean the very cool side. So we'll see. And we know we're going to have a bunch of reds, right? So let's get into our reds. Why don't we come down here? Add some white. You see there's still a lot of chroma in there, but instantly it takes on a different feeling than those. And I mean, it's going to jump off of there. And if you don't know how to unify them, that jump is going to be too big. That may be too big anyway. I mean, that's nuclear. Woo. But this is how you want, this is our superstar, right? So wherever the superstar goes, we want them to shine. We want them to shine. And I'm going to use that like that again to manipulate. It's probably too strong. And what else do we need here? What about our green in light? We wanted that warmer too. So what if I just skipped the blue on that and went with yellow and black? And what's the missing ingredient? We want it lit up. You got it, white. Right, with just adding more yellow ochre, I can bring it to lighter and even start to appearing light. But once I add some white, again, it's going to start taking on a different quality. And that quality is going to translate into lit, right? If you keep that relationship right. Again, that's a little bit dark, but we want to start dark because we work dark to light in oil paint. And that may look dark to you, but is it going to look light on? Well, yes, it is. Okay. What else do we need to get started? Do we need a general highlight here? So what if we got super fancy? What if we just got super, super freaking fancy? And no longer are we going to use white for our highlight. But what if we send it just a bit cool? Maybe a bit green. All right, you guys, I hope this isn't too dry, but we got to go through this to start with. Hope it's not too dry. So to shake things up, how about a little boom? Right, day 2 and already getting so fancy. So fancy. After I get this straight, I'll have more headspace to kind of converse back and forth, but let's get our setup. So right there, and then this seems pretty out of whack too, doesn't it? So how could we harmonize that a little bit? Well, again, what if we took just a touch of this, which is basically black and yellow and white, just a touch. And I'm not going to do it everywhere. Let's leave half, not even half. Let's just leave that much pure. Okay, you see that fits in a little better, doesn't it? It's a very slight difference. And it's not as bright as that, but it's going to fit into the painting better. And then we light it up, add the white. There's a little more richness there. Versus if we do the pure with the pure white, that's just a little bitey, right? Bite, sharp teeth, ouch, hurts. Please don't bite me. Again, so what happened here? Again, rather than just pure red with a little white, we introduced a touch of the gray, and then with our grayish highlight, I also pulled it out. Here was the pure red and white, pulled out with just pure white. Okay, so let's have a little bit richer this time. Just a little bit richer. It's not too much to ask, is it? I don't think so. You guys could do it. You can do it. And why don't we go ahead and mix up a bunch of that too. Again, because it's not just for the apple, but we're going to use this to influence those other colors. pull some white in there, gray it off just a touch. Okay, you guys remember before? And now look, it sits in harmony with those, right? This is still going to jump. This will still jump off all of those. And it's relative. If you wanted lighter shadows, you could do that. But then this end, if you want it still to be light, it has got to be even lighter and more obscure. Okay, again, it's a relationship. And sometimes we want big value jumps, and sometimes we want the small, quiet ones. That is where the artist comes in. That's when the artist comes in. All right, Shakti's joining us. Excellent. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so we just mixed up a bunch, got it in harmony. Now I got to test that and see how close it is, and then we will adjust from there. Okay, so as a review, where I'm going to start today is I'm going to just solidify this shadow a little bit more. What happens is that gets lighter. The the apple is going to get less substance, feel less solid, right? There's a point that you can bring it up to where it can have color, but past that point, it starts kind of getting light and almost invisible and not really solid. So we've just got to experiment and find that. And I'll probably be adding some reflected light in here. And then dealing with the halo. One of the reasons I finished last time was by closing in with this dark, because now when we put the light's going to go over on top of the dark, right? And that's going to give us that glow. Whereas if the dark comes in on top of the light, it doesn't feel natural because that's not how light works. All right. All right, so if you have a question or something, let me know. I can't see the computer at all times, but I'll try to take a break and check it. And in the meantime, we're gonna go for it. Go for it. Let's see. Let's see if I can do something fancy here. If I do that, if I turn that on, if I hit that on, I know I've got to desperately need to resize that, but at least it's a start. At least it's a start. Okay, guys, talk amongst yourselves as we get going here. Please say hi. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. We're on our march towards 1,000. Be going live 3 times a day, 5 days a week in December on YouTube. And we still have Sketch Club going on Facebook. All right, so where's the magic brush? That looks like a pretty magic brush right there. And then let's grab some of that shadow, that red we just mixed up. And remember, this first one's a tester. Okay, that's a little bit darker, which is what I wanted. I'm going to leave this, rather than going edge to edge, more in the center. A lot of times this is known as the core shadow, but it's really just, LaFell just says it's just a shadow, not the core, it's just the shadow. Right? Everything else is something's going on with the shadow, but this is just the shadow. And then sneak right into that, tie that together. Some of those edges are hard. Let's see if we can get a touch of that there. Okay. And then if we jumped over to the green, that's too much color. Too much color. I don't want the green shadow to be brighter than the red. Yeah, that feels better. Then again, can we get these just to bleed? Yeah, this will take on a little more solidity. All right. Okay. So when that turned out to be too green, I just went over and grabbed the red value and introduced a little red, and that took the chroma down. Okay, so that's going to be a cast shadow from the apple, and then it'll turn into a form shadow, so that'll have a soft edge there. We want to get the back of that. That begins to turn over. And then again, we're going to take this leaf, let it invade that negative space. And let's see where this is going to go down. So let it come. See right over there, and let that be a cast shadow from the first leaf, and then we'll turn into, that turns under. Okay, now I got to be careful because I don't want a bunch of tubes around here. So, but with the midtones, I'm going to fill those out. Hopefully you can see the structure that's back in there now. And then without shadow up there, that light doesn't make any sense. It just don't make any sense. Is that too dark? Maybe, maybe. Give me a second. Jeez. All right. So I'm happier about that. I'm happier about that. All right, look at that. Love that apple. You know what? Well, I love you, so take that. How about those apples? How about those apples? So it's not quite so bad, but the red is still just a little bit strong. So you remember I talked about graying that off just a little bit? So let's see what happens when we do that. And since this is light, I'm not going to thin this out. I'm going to go ahead and let this just have full body. Right? And you can't even tell the difference on that. So let us continue to gray. Continue to gray, and Do I want to darken it all? I don't know that I want to darken it. It's more just a matter of graying it. Hmm, that feels a good turn there to me. All right, let's down, up, down. Okay, then if we went darker than that, but lighter than our shadow. All right, so that's not dark enough because look at the value difference. It's too close in value to our light. So you know what Grandpa says is, well, just darken it up. Darken it up, sonny boy. All right, Grandpa, I will. All right, now this, well, I don't know. Let's see, is that gonna work? Hmm, let's see. Right, so that turned a bit purple, which is a bit cool. And again, that coolness, even that gray, if it's got a bit of coolness in it, will be lit up. And that is what's happening here, my friend. And I think that's going to do well for us to get in and out of there. Okay, we want to walk off of that. Just making sure that light's full. You know what I mean. Okay, so some of you are beginning to get this dust up around the apple, but then where you're having trouble is, okay, well then how do I join that with that shadow? And that is a delicate matter. But there's between this dark and that gray, we can find some rich colors. No, not as rich as that green apple or the red apple, right? But a background rich. And that will let that dust up around the apple seem gray, which adds to the sense of light. What are you talking about? Well, let's see. Let us see. We've got that gray background. Let me just check this value. Okay. So that's a little light. A little bit light. There we go. So see, that's a little bit darker. And then it's a bit cooler, but not too much. So there's some color identity there. And it's actually gray. It probably showing up very blue. It's reading a little blue to my eye next to that red. but it's just a gray. Again, keep that light. Notice I'm doing my brush, not, and that's what I mean by full. Fullness, we're fullness pushes out, right? And so the light invades the dark like that, right? The dark's not coming in here and bending. Now you can have cast shadows and everything, but your general glows, again, are full. That fullness is very important. It took me a long time to see that. It seemed like everything was wrong, but it just felt funny. And again, if you don't have that sense of fullness, very simple word, but if you understand the concept in painting, it's quite powerful. All right, and since we do want to open this up a little bit, don't we? We talked about having something a little lighter. So again, just that coolness takes this from shadow, from dark, to the feeling of lighter. The value is not changing. It's just the temperature. I hope that's blowing your mind because it's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, but like everything, we can't get too carried away. That little white spot I pulled a hair out of a little while ago. So I want to get that covered up. All right, so I like that idea of that light coming through here. Probably have a little bit here as well. Definitely have to get back to some soft edges and all that jazz. But again, I try to think of this as a whole. So what I just did there, if you guys will remember, this was really dark. And so again, I just expanded the light. Not that, but the light in the background. I just made the whole shape a little bit bigger. And then that makes it feel like a more complete painting. Even when, if you have the exact same thing here, but you don't have that light and that light stretching out, something seems lacking. But with the same amount of objects, if you get some light going on there, it just feels larger and more complete somehow. Right? These are the things we need to figure out and learn because that's what affects, really affects our painting, the look of our painting. Right? And we're all about looks, lookers. All right, so just softening these edges with a sharp stick, basically. Right? Cutting across. Tells me I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. I got to see something here before we go any further. I just got to see. Sometimes you just have to know. So I need to know if I took pure cad red, and again, if that's hitting there, then that reflected light, let's have it be the opposite and a little more diffused. Wow, it's so bright. So bright. So I can just put a touch of it down there, then I'm going to have to smear it around, as they say. Rub it in a little bit. Soften those edges. All right, that feels a little better. That red's still feeling pretty dang fiery engine. So I think we need to get that in control. I'd say so. I'd say so. How about a view change, huh? See what's happening? I paint on my knees for you guys. I'm just kidding. I'm sitting in a small stool because this is so angled back, and that way I can be more straight on. And I'm not getting my big head in your painting, in your way. Okay, so let's take some of that gray. Sometimes it's just a matter of quantity. Okay, like to me, this highlight feels entirely too big. Entirely too big. What are you doing? All right, is that highlight coming from a fire hose? So push and pull, push and pull. Okay, another thing is, how are we going to step off of that apple? How are we going to step off of that apple? Well, if our apple is right here, right? Remember I said we need to kind of light up that tabletop? So what I'm doing here is I don't want it to compete with the apple. I want to see how yellow I can get this. And do you see how this piece right here is almost a bridge from this into that? I hope that makes sense. So, where do I want this? So that is pretty light. Pretty light. Oops, my bad. My bad. So you see that fire hose that I just put in there? Okay, and that's in a particular place in space, right? So I don't want to bring this light up because we're going to have to change it. And I don't want to bring it all the way over because you're not going to know then whether, well, should I be looking here or over there? No, 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 no. We're just expanding that light a little bit, and we can play some of that down. But before we get darker, richer, we do that so I don't get myself into trouble. So there's what appears to be that fire engine of light, fire hose of light coming. See how dark it is? It's quite a bit different, isn't it? So let's just gray this down, lighter grayer. Before we disappear into that background. And again, look again how that coolness translate into lit. And this time I'm going to be a little more select about it and go a little bit tighter around that apple. So I'm going to just wipe it off with my brush so that then I can just softly kind of blend that in so that there's no hard edges. Right? And that goes along with the look of light being obscure or having, you know, after a certain amount, like a bright light um, can actually obscure things. Okay, and so now that leaves us with coming forward from here. And since we're around here, why don't we start right there and then we can kind of find our way and gray that off. So let's go back to the palette. You guys yell at me when I need to go back to the palette if I forget about it, all right? I know you will. So I grayed it off backwards. Now I want to richen it up coming forwards, but I don't want to get it red. I'd prefer it to be more of kind of an orange. Right, that tabletop kind of wood feel. So that, let's see what that does. And again, what happens if I come I told you guys to yell at me. Nobody's yelling at me. Nobody's yelling at me. So I just put this down and I had a beautiful transition there that it's a lost moment. You just had to be there. Just had to be there. Right now let's merge those two and again just trying to keep the order but obscuring that hard edge and shape. And then can we let go of that? Can we let go of it? Can we let go? Are you ready to say goodbye? All right, just make it a gentle release. Right? Don't have a fight and throw their furniture in the middle of the street. No, 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 no. No, have a nice goodbye, a nice hug. Call us when you get there. So much more pleasant. So much more pleasant. And who doesn't want a little more pleasantness in their life? Right? Is there a reason not to have more pleasantness in your life? That seems like an obvious one, but sometimes it's the obvious ones that are so tricky. Okay, now are those too, it might be too much. I don't know. I don't know. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Okay. And yeah, undoubtedly it's too much, but make it a little too much and then we can pull it back. All right, so I'm just taking a look here for a second. Let's have a look. What do you guys think? Wow, we're almost coming up on an hour here. So especially towards the end, I don't run around doing a lot of things, but I kind of really slow down on the things I am doing. So I want to knock that down a little bit, but I also want to see um, if I can get a little more color on that table. So let's do that before we knock it down, like so maybe right in here. Right in here. What would that look like? Right, and if I don't make it a solid mark too, it can light it up a little bit without it totally taking over. Okay, slowly but surely. So we kind of jump ahead a little bit and then tie it back together. And then what do we want to do in here? Like this, but maybe it needs to have a little bit more of a green feel to it. And as we come forward on the table, some of these marks and things can get a little larger. Okay. All right, so now into the background with the same idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that really loud table here, and I'm going to kiss it up against that purple background. Let's see. And so now we're holding all the light in. What if we let the light spill out a little bit? So let's see what happens there. Maybe from right here. And again, we don't want it straight out because that's a little quick, but you feel some of the intensity was just released a little bit. It's like a slight release valve, right? We're not so caged up. And again, that's just a matter of degree. Just a matter of degree. Okay, and And then again, just by softening some edges and just graying this a bit. It's two internal edges. Goes down. That one seems like it could still stand to go down a bit. Just go ahead and blow that right through there. Uh, so releasing the end of those shadows a little bit. That'll also let the painting breathe a little bit, right? Softer joint in there. All right, I'm a little bit happy with that. So it's got some refining, no doubt about it. But how about we go up to the apple now, to the stick, and see what we can do there. An hour. All right, am I wearing you guys out? I hope not. I'm gonna try to do this and see if we can't find a stop in place before too long. Don't want to wear out my welcome. So. I'm having a little thunk here. Having a little thunk. Trying to see how this baby looks. And then what do I need to do there? What needs to happen there? I do feel that this is just slightly too heavy, but it's going to be such a subtle thing. I don't want to rush into it. So I'd rather work on the stem a little bit. You know what? I'm going to get the dark of that stem going. And let's go from that dark. I think that will help us out tremendously. So the dark of that stem. Okay, so we don't want to be too far off of this, but again, we don't want this as strong as the apple, but it's going to be so small, it's going to be hard to take that. If we can get that in there, that light will really, I think, begin to show up. So I'm hoping that warm will overpower that background a bit. Then I can always come in and adjust that background value. Kind of disappeared in there, didn't it? It disappeared a little bit. So we have ourselves a conundrum. Oops. Sorry, I left you guys out again. Sorry about that. All right. So let's cut in with this background then and see if we can make this begin to come alive. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gray and I'm going to send it towards the green, away from the red. Let's see what happens. Okay, so that shows up, but that's entirely too light. Entirely too light. Okay, so much of this it's hard because it's just, that finish that so many of you guys are looking for is more of a feel than a certain thing. Just that right transition, that right release, right? How far do we take that light out? If we do take it all the way to the edge, it disappears. It disappears. Look at Cliff's profile you got there. You could do some pretty sweet paintings off of that thing. But alas, today is an apple, not Cliff as a wandering nomad in the desert. And again, as I do this, just that little bit, that might be all it takes then to be able to grab with a little bit of a darker in here. Okay, again, we want to make sure we're staying full. If light's hitting that, it's got to be bouncing all around there. Because we got hardcore light around here, man. We got hardcore light. Okay, and what's happening now is this is taking, because of when I oiled it out, it's setting up to a certain point right now that just has got just enough resistance that it's the perfect to just drag this into that. And notice again, I'm going full. I can change the direction of that fullness, but I'm always going full. I never want to cut back in like that or cut. Right? I can go full, I can go full, I can go full, right? So we can change it, but just go full, man. Go full. Okay. Okay, so let's go a bit darker here. There we go. We don't have to have that everywhere either. Just want to get something that brings that stem to life. Even though this is dark, and generally we don't want, trying to, a little texture there too will help out. Because that'll literally bring it off the surface. Oops, but that background is still too close there. Still too close. What are we going to do about that? Man. Man. All right, guys. Well, I got to do something about that. Do you guys want to hang out and watch that? Or shall we call this a day? And we'll be back tomorrow from some more. Was there any questions before we go today? I'm not going to get too far off on this, but if I can answer the question without messing up the painting, I'll do it. I'll do it. All right, I'll give you guys a minute to think about that. While I have a look here. Let's go wide on that. Oh, it's so close. It's so close. There's just some little subtle things that need to happen. All right, why don't we call that a day? That'll be about an hour. Be back tonight with some masterwork. We'll look at that. And then we'll do it all again tomorrow and throw in a sketch club on top of it. Okay, guys, so let's see what kind of fancy buttons and graphics I got here. What did I forget? Oh my gosh, how did I forget that? How did I forget that? We forgot to start the show. So day 2, so goal for day 3 is, hey, remember to start the show, man. Did I do that and I forgot about it? I don't think so. I don't think so. All right, anyway, hope to see you tonight or tomorrow. If you stop by, please like, comment. Don't forget to do what? Subscribe. All right. All right. Have a good one, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.